Welcome back for part 5 of our Dii Consentes series. In this lesson, we'll be discussing the Roman god Mars. Mars was the ancient Roman god of war. As such, he was often depicted wearing a helmet and a full set of armor, and many times was shown carrying a spear or, less often, a sword. Many times in statues of Mars you can see him shown as a mature, fully bearded man who is very muscular. In ancient Roman society, just like in today's society, even younger men were considered to be a mature adult once they'd seen the horrors of war. His muscularity represents Mars's immense physical strength and power, as well as his battle prowess. Being the god of war, and more specifically single combat, that is, when one person fights another directly, Mars's statues sought to highlight these traits about him. He is the child of Jupiter and Juno, who we talked about last week. Also, he is typically seen as being equivalent to the Greek god Ares, who's being shown here. While this is mostly true, the Romans did have a slightly different view of this god than their Greek counterparts. Ares, in Greek society, was seen as a destructive force, who left nothing but ruin in his wake. Mars, on the other hand, was seen by the Romans as being a god who does cause harm, but only makes war in order to bring about something good. The Romans were a very warlike people, and it's possible that they developed this aspect of Mars as someone who destroys in order to create, so that they could justify their love of war and conquering. After all, the Romans really believed that trying to conquer the world, they were doing a good thing for everyone. As the Roman Republic, and eventually Empire, grew in size and scope, the worship of Mars became less important. The Romans realized that if they wanted to maintain their country through military might, they didn't need individual strength in battle, so much as strategic strength in battle, which falls under the domain of Minerva, as we mentioned last week. Because of this, after some time, the worship of Mars faded, and the worship of Minerva grew stronger. The most well-known symbols of Mars are the spear and shield, which would be natural for a god of war. In fact, in ancient Rome there was a temple in which hung 12 shields that were used in a ritual to honor Mars. Although swords were a popular military tool at the time, the spear is a very ancient weapon, and the ancient nature of the gods made it a perfect fit for the personification of Mars. The Latin word for spear is hasta. Interestingly enough, this shape that you see here is a stylized version of an ancient symbol. Looking at it, you can see the arrow shape on top, which represents the spear of Mars, as well as the circle shape, which represents the shield of Mars underneath it. The idea of war being a primarily masculine endeavor was so pervasive in Roman culture that it has influenced our society today. Nowadays, this same symbol represents anything that is male or masculine. Worship of the god Mars was very popular for the warlike Romans. He was so popular that when they first instituted a calendar, Martius, in reference to the god Mars, was the very first month. The New Year celebration was actually a festival called Dies Natalis, which we now associate with the Christian holiday of Christmas. Back then, though, the first day of the year was considered to be Mars's birthday. The festivities in March continued, with a festival called Equirria on March 14th. As we'll discuss later in the year, the 14th or 15th of each month was a special day, and usually festivities were reserved for those dates. Equirria was a day in which mounted horsemen or charioteers would hold races in Mars's honor. Aside from some other small celebrations, the final celebration in Martius was called Tubilostrium. It was a time for departing armies to be purified before leaving for war. The beginning of the year was so important for Mars and the Romans because it was the time when the snows had melted enough for the armies to go forth and conquer some more. Likewise, in October there was another festival to Mars called Armilostrium, where they would purify their weapons before putting them away for the winter. Finally, one interesting religious practice was that during the festivals in March, 12 Roman priests called Salii would wear armor, carry spears, and carry the 12 special shields we mentioned earlier. Equipped with all of this, they would do a special jump dance around the city, imitating a soldier leaping in combat. Salii is a simple term in Latin, which, when translated to English, means jumpers. Worship of Mars was fairly important in regular Roman life too. Even though he was the god of war, and soldiers and government officials would pray to him, especially during wartime, the average Roman citizen would as well. You see, Mars represented strength in battle, but people often translated that into victory and strength in their daily lives. He was also considered to be the protector of Rome, and everyone needs a little victory and protection in their life.